Hello everyone, myself Shresh Agarwal, the competitive programming head of Coding Club IIT Guwahati, and I'll be taking the first lecture of Algomaniac's advanced track, and the topic for today is game theory. So let's get started. Yeah. So what is game theory? Before that, let's see what is a game in competitive programming. So some of you must have seen problems like Alice and Bob play a game, then there's a setup of the game, and then you're asked to find the winner if both of them play optimally. So all such problems fall under the category of game, where multiple players play a game in such a way that they have to optimize their to maximize their chances of winning by taking decisions. So we'll see for what it is. Okay, so for those who haven't seen a game problem before, we'll quickly go through this problem. So I'll explain what the problem basically says. It says it has two players, Alice and Bob, and they decided to play a game on string S, which has n characters. And Alice makes the first move and they move alternatively. Now, each player must select an index I which is in the range of 1 to n, and they have to change every single character of the string to some other character. Now, what the game is on, the Alice wants to make this new string lexicographically smallest, while wants to make the same string lexicographically largest. So, stop the video for a while and think about it, and then we'll discuss the solution. Okay, so after thinking about it for a while, you will realize that the greedy solution actually works here. Uh, Actually, it works in most of the low-rated problems of game theory. So, both of the players would try to select the smallest index I, which has not yet been chosen, and change it to a character which favors them. Like, if we see the second case, B has been changed to AZ. So with this case, we can see that Alice first chose the index I first and changed the B into A. Then Bob chose second index, changed it to Z, and so on. Now, consider the third case where the first character is already A, which favors Alice. So it has been changed to next smallest character, that is B. Similarly, for second case, when Bob chose Z, it is already which favors it, but it has to change it, so it changes it to Y. Else, Alice would have chosen this character in next turn and changed it to A, which Bob doesn't want, basically. So this is like the basic like, beginning problem of game theory, just to get feel of the topic. Okay, so next we will discuss the graph approach. So in this, it works by reducing the game into a graph where each vertex of the graph is equivalent to a state of the game, and each directed edge is equivalent to a player's move. So we'll do some definitions here, like we'll call a vertex a winning vertex if the player starting at this state will win the game if they play optimally. And similarly, a vertex will be called a losing vertex if the players at this vertex will lose the game. So now to call a vertex as a winning or a losing vertex, we'll need to set some rules. So first rule is if a vertex has an outgoing edge that leads to a losing vertex, then the vertex itself is a winning vertex. Second rule, if the outgoing edges of a certain vertex lead to winning vertex, then the vertex itself is a losing vertex. I'll try to explain these two rules. The first rule basically means you are at a vertex and you can make a move such that the other player you're playing with is at a losing vertex. That basically puts you in a winning position. So that's what the first rule says. And second rule is kind of exactly opposite, like kind of opposite of that. It says that you are at a vertex and all like any move you make from this vertex will put the second player in a winning position. That puts you in a losing position. So that's the second rule. And third rule is if at some point there are still undefined vertices and neither will fit the first or the second rule, then each of these vertices, when used as a starting vertex, will lead to a draw if both players play optimal. Okay, so we'll try understanding the graph approach with an example. So the example says Alice and Bob play a game. They start with a number n and play in turns. In each turn, a player can make any one of the following moves. First move is divide n by any of its odd divisors greater than 1. Second move says subtract 1 from n if n is greater than 1. Divisors of a number include the number itself, we know that, and the player who is unable to make a move loses the game. So stop the video for a moment and think about how we can define the winning and losing vertices. Like one thing which we can see that when n reaches 1, it is a losing vertex. Like we can't reduce it any further. Like the player who has got 1 has lost the game. So try making cases and think about what all the vertices are possible. Hmm. So after thinking for a while, you must have noticed that any odd number which is greater than 1 has its odd divisor, that's the number itself, like 3, 5, 7. Like all of these numbers are divisors of itself, and you can just divide them with themselves. Like 3 can be divided by 3 to get 1. So I claim that all these states are winning vertices, because if Alice gets number 3 or 5, any odd number, and it is divided by the number itself, that's 3, so Bob will get 1 and he can't make any further move, so he has lost the game and Alice won the game. So all the odd numbers are winning vertices. Next, for the number 2, we can see that we can just subtract 1 from 2 by this second operation, and this the player has won. So 2 is also winning vertex. Okay, so now let's consider all the numbers of the form 2 to the power n, like 2, 4, 8, 16. And I'm claiming that all these states are losing states because they don't have any first. We can't do first operation. Like divide n by any or divisor, it doesn't have any odd divisor greater than 1. So we'll have to go with the second operation. So like for 16, we have to make 16, do the second operation and make it 15. Now 15 is a winning state, which we proved earlier, which means we are left with only one operation, and that is a winning state, which makes all 2 to the power n numbers a losing state. So now only one case is left where like we'll consider rest of the even numbers, which will be of the form 2 to the power n into some product of primes. So what we can just do is that divide it by those product of primes. For say, if the number is 20, it's 2 to the power 2 into 5. So we'll just divide it by 5 and we are left with a losing state. So from a vertex, we can go to a losing state, which makes this vertex a winning state. So think we are done with this. So all the odd numbers are a winning state. All the numbers of the form 2 to the power n are losing state, and rest of them are also winning state, except 2. Like 2 is a losing state. Okay, so we conclude this problem by saying that 1 is a losing state, 2 is a winning state, and any other number of the form 2 to the power n is also a losing state, and every other number is a winning state. So that's it, and next we'll move to the game of NIM. Okay, so the game of NIM, like it's a very standard topic of game theory and you'll see its variants everywhere. So I'll read the problem for you. There are several piles, each with several stones. In a move, a player can take any positive number of stones from any one of the pile and throw them away. A player loses if they can't make a move. That basically means when all the piles are empty. So the solution to the problem is the current player has a winning strategy if and only if the XOR sum of the pile sizes is non-zero. And now we'll try to prove it. So it is actually based on the presence of the symmetry strategy for the opponent. Like we see that once in a position with the XOR sum equal to 0, the player won't be able to make it non-zero in a long term. So they transition to a position with a non-zero XOR sum, the opponent will always have a move returning to the XOR sum back to 0. Like let's see an example for this. So consider three piles with sizes of 1, 2 and 3. Like the first pile has one stone, second 2 and third pile has 3. So the XOR sum of 1, 2 and 3 is 0. So now if the player tries to remove some stones from any one of the pile, the XOR sum will become non-zero. So the next player will remove some stones such that next XOR sum is 0. Like if we try removing the first pile, like one stone from the first pile, the XOR sum would be 1. So the player can just remove one stone from this third pile, which should leave us with 2 and 2. And the XOR sum of 2 and 2 is 0. So it basically works that you are just reverting back the changes the first player made. Like whatever the sort sum would be, there always exists a state, like an operation, so then you can again generate sort sum equal to 0. So consider the other case like 1, 3, and 4. So the sort sum for this comes out to be 6, which is non-zero. Now we can always remove some stone, like which I just said, from a pile to make the sort sum 0. In this case, we can just remove two stones from the third pile, which would make 1, 2, and 3, and sort sum of 1, 2, and 3 would be 0. So from this state, we can do an operation which goes to this state, which is a losing state. So this becomes a winning state. So that's what it's written here. So stop the video and think about it for a while. So I'll just repeat myself. What we are doing is we are trying to revert back the change or the difference a player created or the disturbance the player created from XOR sum. Like from 0, if he's making it to some other number, we'll just remove some stones and make it back to 0. So that's how it works. So now let's look at a variant of game of name. That is, both the players have one more operation. They can add stones as well to any one of the file. Like earlier they were only allowed to remove stones, but now they can add stones as well. So now stop the video for a while and think about it. What could be the possible solution? Okay, so now let's discuss the solution for the problem. So what I claim is adding stones does not change the winning or losing states, like as the ones defined in game of name, standard game of name, in which we only were allowed to remove stones. So we'll try to prove this. So the first case is when the player is on a winning state and the XOR sum is not equal to 0, like that is XOR sum not equal to 0. So he will follow the optimal approach as discussed in the standard name of. That's because he's still allowed to remove stones. So he'll just follow that approach and win the game. So next case is when the player is on a losing state, that is XOR sum equal to 0, and he removes stones from pile. Like now he has two options. He can either remove stones or add stones. First we'll consider the case when he can remove stones. So this case is already covered in the standard name game. Like he XOR sum is 0, and if he removes some stone, he'll make the XOR sum non-zero, which the other player will take advantage of and just revert back changes till he wins the game. So the only case added is the third case. Now, the player is in a losing state, XOR sum 0, and he adds some stones to the pile. Now, we'll see that adding stones will make the XOR sum non-zero again. So again, first, like the other player can follow the optimal strategy of making the XOR sum 0 and win the game again. So, like for the case, if you think 1, 2, and 3, and player adds like just one stone in the last pile, that is, it makes it 1, 2, and 4. So, what the player can do is just remove that one stone from the last pile and make it 1, 2, 3. So, he just reverted back those changes and made this awesome 0 again. So, that's how it was like. That's what I've written. Like, think of it as other player can always remove exactly same number of stones from the same pile to reach the same state again. Okay, so I'll just summarize what we discussed. So the claim that all the winning and losing states defined in the standard name game still hold true for this variant in which we can add stones to any pile. Because if a player adds some stones to any one of the pile, the other player can just remove exactly same stones and return back to the same state. So that won't change any winning or losing state for us. So that's game of name and its variant for us. Next, we'll discuss this Sprague-Grundy theorem. Okay, so the Sprague-Grundy theorem. It basically tells us how to find for any game state of any impartial game a corresponding state of nim. So let's go with some definitions. Let V be the current state and V1, V2, V3 up to Vn be the states reachable from V. Like we can make a move from V and go to V1, V2, V3 or Vn, like any n possible states. So we can assign state V a value x, which is equivalent to a game of nim with one pile of size x. So this x will be called the Grundy value of the state V, and it is calculated by the formula x equal to max of x1, x2, x3 up to xn, like all possible states which it can go to. So that's what I've written. And max is, if you don't know, max is the smallest non-negative integer which is not present in the set. Like max of 0, 1, 3, 4 is 2, or 0, 1 is present in the set and 2 is not present in the set. So note the value 0, current state is losing, otherwise it is winning state. Okay, so we'll try to understand this Sprague-Grundy theorem with an example. So I'll read the problem for you. Consider a checkered strip of size 1 cross n, and in one move the player must put one cross, but it is forbidden to put two crosses next to each other, like they should be adjacent to each other, and as usual the player without a valid move loses. So in the first example you can say if we place a cross here, then we are not allowed to place crosses in these red boxes, but we are allowed to place crosses in these green boxes, like for the next move. For the corner case it's just one box which is forbidden, and in center it's two boxes which are forbidden. Similarly we can see in for this case. So try to think about it and try how we can reduce it, like how we can define the Grundy formula, Grundy values in the game. Stop the video and think about it. Okay, so now we'll discuss the solution for the problem discussed. So when a player puts a cross in any of the cell, we can think of the strip being split into two independent parts. Like in the previous case, if we just place a cross here, we can think of it as two strips, one this part and the other this complete. Like just forget about this cross. You can consider it as two different independent strips. So what we can do is for this case, we can just take union of these two cases. So like, from this complete strip, we are going to a state which breaks it into two cases of this and this. So that's what we are trying to explain. We can think of the strip being split into two independent parts, to the left of the cross and to the right. In this case, the cell with the cross as well as the left and the right neighbors are destroyed. The red parts, like these are being destroyed, and nothing more can be put in them. Therefore, if we number the cells from 1 to n, then put the cross in position I, which is between 1 and n, then it breaks the strip into two strips of length I minus 2 and n minus I minus 1. Let's see how it goes. So in the first case, after doing the numbering, so if we put a cross in 4, just forget this cross for a while, like the cross in 10. So putting a cross in 4 basically breaks the strip of size 10 into two strips of size 2 and 5. So that is if it's 1 to 3, breaks into I minus 2 and n minus I minus 1, that is 5. 10 minus 4 minus 1, that's 5. So from one strip of 10 we get two strips of size 2 and 5. And like now we have reduced the problem, now we have to just club these cases. Like for the yes, we have to consider this one case where if we place a cross in the end, so we just get one strip of size n minus 2. So Grundy value Gn as the form that will be max of. Now we have to consider all the cases which are possible. Like it should be union and we have to take max of that. So n minus 2 is one case. Like if you place cross in the end, and we have to iterate over all I from 2 to n minus 1 and take the XOR of these two. Like as we told earlier, like each Grundy number is equivalent to a single pile of that many stones. So we'll take the XOR sum of those two possible states if you place a cross in middle, and we'll take union for all these values of I. So if you think about it, it's an ON square solution and it should be easy to go. Okay, so I'll try to summarize the problem. So what we tried to do is that apply Sprague-Grundy theorem to this problem so that we can get the answer for some Gn by considering all the possible states it can go to. So there were basically just two cases. Either you can place a cross in middle or in the corner. If you place a cross in the corner, you're left with one strip of size n minus 2. And if you place a cross in somewhere middle, you'll get two strips of size n minus 2 or sorry I minus 2 or n minus I minus 1. So we'll just take the XOR value of these two as stated by the Sprague-Grundy theorem, and we'll just in the end take mix of all these values and get our answer. So we conclude that if this mix comes out to be non-zero, then the state is a winning state for the first player. Else, if the mix comes out to be zero, it's a losing state for the first player. And the time complexity, you can see that will come out to be n squared. Just try it for yourself. So that's it. Link to all the resources will be given in the video description. And for those who want to learn more about game theory, I'll suggest reading about Nash equilibrium of a game. It's an interesting topic and you'll actually like it. So I'll be attaching the link for that too, the resources where you can read from, and link to the Code Forces practice gym contest will also be available for you. and we will keep a discussion session later on to resolve your doubts. And also, if you found the video helpful, do drop us a like and subscribe to the channel. And you can check the Coding Club ITG Discord server too for more such stuff and contests which we organize where you can participate. So with this, thank you for watching the video and see you next time.